Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Montgomery County Council meeting. We have two proclamations to begin with today, and the red is out. The first one is a proclamation recognizing Lunar New Year by Councilmember Mink, myself, and the county executive, and we'll come down to start. Get started, and the county executive want to go first? Go ahead.
Sure. Happy New Year. That's one way to say it. Shin Yen Kwai Ler. Chuk Mun Damoy. Sehe Bu Mani Bode Seyo. So I'm really glad to be doing this. We've been celebrating New Year for a while. It's one of the great traditions that you celebrate it for more than a day. You know, it's not just New Year's Eve, go out and party, then forget about it. You celebrate for almost 2 months. And it's really great to see the community come together again over and over to talk and meet with each other and to greet the new year. And I think psychologically it's probably good for everybody to be talking about the year they're going into and to do this more than just one time. So I like the tradition. I wish Americans could adopt a tradition like that. We'd probably be healthier. I think you all know you're the fastest growing minority group in Montgomery County. There are no minority groups anymore. You're now 1/6 of the population. The black population is about 21%, the Hispanic population 21, 22%. White folks are the rest. Nobody is a majority anymore. So this is a very diverse county, and we have policies that reinforce that diversity. When you hear people talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, in Montgomery County, you can't have a policy that doesn't involve diversity, equity, and inclusion, because the county is not one group of people. It is a conglomerate of many different people from many different places, and we're really glad that you chose to make Montgomery County your home. We have now our first Asian council member, Kristin Mink. We have our first Asian police chief, Chief Yamada, first Asian sheriff, Sheriff Max Wee, and our first Asian school board member, Julie Yang. So this community is beginning to get the political presence that matches your actual population presence in the county, and that's a good thing. So the more people are involved, the more voices we hear, the more this county reflects everybody who lives here. This is the year of the snake. It's kind of ironic. It's regarded as the baby dragon, but this is supposed to be the year where we are going to be wise and able to transform and adapt to a changing environment. Nothing says changing environment than the Orange Man. And the year of the snake signifies a transformative year filled with innovative ways to adapt to new challenges. That's seriously our job this year, is to figure out how we adapt to the challenges of our time and make sure we come out of this hole and can move forward together. So just thank you so much. I love the celebrations, and you're really good partners for us. And when we were over in Asia on some of our economic development stuff, you all played a big role in that. You set up meetings, you introduced us to the community, but the best part was there were people in the places we went who knew about Montgomery County, and because of the Asian population here, where they still have relationships, they talk about how good Montgomery County is. You all are our best ambassadors when we go overseas, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, I'm Kate Stewart. I'm the council president, and on behalf of the county council, I just want to say Happy New Year, and we are so glad that you are here. As the county exec said, all of you, part of our community, does strengthen the work that we do here and the support that you provide. And while there is great diversity in our community and even among our Asian American community, the core values, what we celebrate each New New Year, about family, prosperity, are things that we all share. And so I'm glad that we're able to come together at this time and to celebrate. And yes, it is very nice that these celebrations go on, and it's not just one day, but we're able to gather in different parts of our county with our different communities to celebrate in different ways. I may have to go on a little bit of a diet afterwards, because even just this past weekend, trying all the delicious foods and being in community with all of you has been wonderful. In addition to what the county executive said, the Year of the Snake is also for people born this year. They are said to be born with a full heart and to be full of love. And I think that is a wonderful thing for this year as we approach it. I know there's a lot of fear and anxiety in our community right now, but to hold on to the love in our community and how we're going to support each other is what we need to continue to do. And it is now with my great pleasure that I get to introduce my colleague, Councilmember Mink, the first Asian American on our county council.
Thank you, President Stewart. Hi, everyone. It is so wonderful to see all of you here today. I love that we get to have our Lunar New Year proclamation on Delta Day at the same time. It's just such a beautiful thing and really speaks volumes about Montgomery County and who we are here. I was talking to my mom about this proclamation. She is a Chinese immigrant. She came over as a young adult here, and then she and my dad settled here in Montgomery County. And she said, I think that the year, when I think she was 18, she said, I think that the year that I came over to the U.S. was also the Year of the Snake. And that's, says something, because as has been stated, the snake, the Year of the Snake symbolizes, adaptation, transformation, change. And in this current environment with the current federal administration, that means one thing. But in the context of my mom coming to the United States, settling here in Montgomery County, she started off in community college. She ended up working for NASA Goddard. When she had me and my brother, she shifted to working for the Montgomery County public school system. That change and adaptation and transformation can mean something else, something really beautiful, and something that really is representative of who we actually are here in Montgomery County and who we are determined to stay and to be as we continue to move forward. We will not be moving backwards. Not only will we not be moving backwards, we are going to continue moving forward. So thank you all for being here today. And now I have the tremendous honor to welcome up so many of our guests here today, so many of our community leaders. And Judge Pack is going to kick us off with a few words.
First, I want to thank County Council and County Executive for recognizing Lunar New Year. So many of Asian Americans celebrate. And I am very grateful for always including our community. I want to introduce all the top leaders who are here today. First, Dr. Ping Lu from the Commissioner of the Governor's Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs. Xiu Chong Rosemark, County Executive's Advisory Committee member, as well as the Executive Director of the lead and the Vice Chair of the Governor's Commission on APA Affairs. And Mr. Nguyen, he's the also Governor's Commission on APA Affairs. And Linda Han, President of the Hanning Global Hyundai. And Elena Lee, Commissioner of Governor's Commission on APA Affairs. Christy Chung, the board member of the Koreatown Board Committee, and Dr. Youngmi Kim, principal of Hoover Middle School, as well as the Korean American Education Foundation, and Haley Rowe, representative from the Congressman Jamie Raskin's office. And next to us is the Dr. Ji-Young Cho, Executive Director of the Korean Community Service Center, and the Ms. Yuling Shan from the Coordination Council of the Chinese American. And next to it is Mr. Kwon from the Korean American Senior Citizens Association of State of Maryland. And the next is Kate Liu of the Executive Director of CCACC Health Center. And Mr. Boson, former president of the Union of Chinese American Professionals. And of course, another representative from the Coordination Council of Chinese American Organizations.
Wow.
And also we have Dao Tran of the Vietnamese Community Service, and the Miss Sum Myung Hwang from the president of the Sons Media Systems. And we also have Mana 24 Christian newspaper, Ms. No Kyung Park.
Terrific. Now we will read the proclamation. I'll invite the county exec up to kick us off.
Whereas Montgomery County is home to a multitude of cultures, languages, and traditions from around the world, and
Whereas the Asian American and Pacific Islander community is now one of the fastest growing communities in Montgomery County, representing over 16% of the total population, and has made innumerable contributions to the economic, cultural, and civic growth of Montgomery County. And
whereas Lunar New Year is one of the most important holidays for many Asian Americans living in Montgomery County, and
whereas 2025 is the year of the snake brings wisdom, transformation, adaptation, and creativity. The year of the snake signifies a transformative year, making headways in strategic ways and adapting to changes with greater awareness. And
whereas festivities across the county will showcase the richness of Asian culture and highlight the importance of family togetherness.
now therefore do we, Marc Elrich, as County Executive, the County Council of Montgomery County, hereby proclaim January 29th, 2025 as Lunar New Year Day in Montgomery County, encourage residents to join in recognizing the contributions of Asian American community and take part in celebrations across the county. Signed this day by the County Executive, myself, and Councilmember Kristin Mink. All right, now we all
Maybe this little window here. It'll collapse.
We're gonna get everyone in the picture. Nobody wants to get. Maybe turn sideways.
We've all been signaling. Two rows. There you go.
Right in.
All righty.
Thank you so much.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Tell your wife Happy New Year.
All right, we'll be moving on to our next proclamation now. And we have, thank you. We have the proclamation recognizing the third annual Delta Day at Montgomery County Council, and I'll ask, this will be presented by Councilmember Albornoz and Councilmember Sayles.
Calling all deltas to the floor. Is this in the center?
Where is Do y'all need to stand?
I'll take
Oh,
one.
okay. Ready? Okay.
And you'll be on the other side.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'll take one of these. I'll give it out afterwards. Okay. All right. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the 3rd annual Delta Day at the Montgomery County Council. I'm honored to be here with my colleague, Mr. Gabe Albornoz, Chair of the Health and Human Services, where we serve together. And this event has been spearheaded by good friend and fellow member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Ms. Pamela Luckett. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be joined by our 2 chapter presidents. We have with us Sora Brooke Holmes of the Potomac Valley Alumni Chapter, and we also have Barbara Boney from the Montgomery County, Maryland Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. This organization has over 112 years of experience all across not just the United States, but the world. As we heard earlier this morning about the chapters that have been located and founded all over the world, it's so heartwarming to see our sisterhood expand our work, our scholarship, and our public service to ensure that the least among us, the most vulnerable, are taken care of. And we also, through our Delta Gems program, ensure that our young people are also empowered to carry on the legacy of our founders. And so we wanted to share a few words just about our organization. In addition to the work that we've done, we have a 5-thrust programmatic. We have a programmatic thrust 5-point program. And through this effort, this is how we champion all of our initiatives. Whether it's through economic development, ensuring pathways to home ownership, and addressing access to affordable housing, political involvement through social action, ensuring the health and well-being of our community through our health and mental health, physical and mental health programmatic thrusts, and as I mentioned, our international development, and of course, education. That is so important to the founding of our organization. As college-educated women, we want to ensure the legacy of education all throughout the programs that we foster and continue to support. Every year on December 1st, the Deltas host an annual breakfast in honor of World AIDS Day. As I mentioned earlier downstairs, as the lead for eliminating disparities in public health, it is so sad to see that 1 in 5 of our residents are diagnosed with HIV/AIDS, and 85% of those diagnosed are Black women. So it's an epidemic that we continue to champion and shine a light on. It shouldn't happen in a county like Montgomery County, but that's the reality. And not just in health disparities, but ensuring we eliminate disparities in our economy are on the top of our list of priorities. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Councilmember Albornoz now.
Thank you. Well, good morning, good people. It is a privilege, truly a privilege this morning, an honor to be with all of you. I want to begin by expressing on behalf of all of my colleagues on the council what a wonderful thing it is for us to have the opportunity to work alongside Councilmember Sayles and Pam Luckett every day here on the council doing the people's work, and they represent this remarkable institution. I had the opportunity to share a few words upstairs at a breakfast, and what I shared was, in these times of chaos and confusion, the Deltas help provide some clarity. They help remind us that extraordinary women can do extraordinary things, and we as a community can come together and push back against that chaos and confusion and remind us of the importance of the principles of togetherness, and that alone none of us can do anything, but together we can accomplish so much more. What the Deltas do every day on behalf of our entire community, not just here in Montgomery County, but as you heard in the state of Maryland, in our country, and around the world, is help uplift communities, build bridges, and to educate our community about the importance of issues that impact their community every day. So this is a wonderful day, one that I need, filled with hope. We all need a lot more hope these days. And I want to thank all of you for your leadership, your commitment, and your partnership with Montgomery County.
Before I turn this over to our two presidents to share a brief, so we are going to read the proclamation. We heard from our presidents downstairs. They also shared their legislative priorities for 2025. For those who aren't familiar with the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, we are one of 9 members of the Divine Nine, which is the National Pan-Hellenic Council of Sororities and Fraternities established by Black communities all across college campuses, HBCU campuses. And we also have our colleague, Councilmember Jawando, a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. With Black History coming up in just a few days, we will be hosting another event to shine light on the Divine Nine fraternities and sororities and all the contributions that they are contributing to our community. As we spoke this morning, Councilmember Albornoz reminded us that just yesterday you may have received the alert, like many of us, that the administration is going to be shutting off funds for nonprofits. We don't know how that's going to impact nonprofits here in Montgomery County, but you can rest assured that the Health and Human Services Committee will be vigilant and overseeing taking care of our communities in that absence. Thank you. Now we'll read the proclamation. The County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland proclamation. Whereas Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated was founded on January 13th, 1913 by 22 African-American undergraduate women studying at Howard University who sought to create an organization rooted in sisterhood, scholarship, service, and social action. And
whereas 112 years later, the organization has blossomed into more than those courageous young women could have ever imagined, with over 350,000 initiated women and over 1,000 chapters around the world. And
whereas the theme for the work of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for this biennium is Forward with Fortitude, engaging our sisterhood, empowering our communities, and elevating our impact.
And whereas the Montgomery County Alumni Chapter, chartered in 1970, and the Potomac Valley Alumni Chapter, chartered in 1985, work independently and collaboratively across Montgomery County to serve the community's various needs through the sorority's 5-point programmatic thrust: economic development, educational development, international awareness and involvement, physical and mental health, and political awareness and involvement. And whereas
members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated are leaders in the community across Montgomery County and in the state of Maryland, holding elected offices on the federal, state, and local levels, and the Board of Education. in addition to prominent roles as business leaders, educators, entrepreneurs, and community activists. And
whereas the impact of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is felt every day in Montgomery County through a wide range of service programs such as Delta Academy, Delta GEMS, GEMS, and Embody, EMBODI, STEM and reading programs, voter registration, and community conversations with elected officials like the one we had this morning. MLK Day of service and various health and wellness programs, including the annual World AIDS Day Solidarity for Health Equity Breakfast and Black Maternal Health Day of Service. Now, Councilmember Sayles is going to take us home.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Montgomery County Council hereby celebrates the Montgomery County Alumni Chapter and the Potomac Valley Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated on the 3rd Annual Delta Day at the County Council. And be it further resolved that you have our commitment as partners in your ongoing efforts to improve the quality of life for all residents across Montgomery County, presented on this 28th day of January in the year 2025 by Councilmember Gabe Albornoz, Councilmember Laurie-Anne Sayles, and Council President Kate Stewart. Thank you. Oh, and I would be remiss if I did not recognize our United States Senator Angela Also Brooks, a fellow member and soror of our organization. We're so proud to have her leading our state. Thank you. She's not here, unfortunately. She's here in spirit,
Thank you. You're welcome, Brooke. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we are now move on to general business. Madam Clerk, will you please share today's announcements?
Good morning. Public hearings on the FY26 capital budget, amendments to the FY25 to 30 capital improvements program, supplemental appropriations to the FY25 capital budget, and the FY26 to 31 WSSC Water Capital Improvements Program will be held on Wednesday, February 5th, 2025 at 1:30 p.m. and 7 o'clock p.m. and Thursday, February 6th, 2025 at 1:30 p.m. and 7 o'clock p.m. here at the Council Office Building. Those wishing to provide testimony must register in advance via the Council's website or by calling 240-777-7803. Testimony may be given in person or virtually, and there are several options to submit testimony for the Council's consideration if you are unable to attend the hearing. More information can be found on the Council's website. The public hearing for Bill 2824, Employees Retirement System and Other Post-Employees Benefits Administration, Power and Duties, has been rescheduled from February 18th, 2025 to February 25th, 2025 at 1:30 p.m. Also, there are two minor updates to today's agenda. For agenda item 4, a public hearing on a resolution to approve the spending affordability guidelines for the FY26 operating budget. The Government Operations and Fiscal Policy work session for this item is scheduled on February 6th, 2025. Additionally, for agenda item number 5, a public hearing on supplemental appropriation 2540 to the fiscal year 2025 operating budget for Montgomery County Public Schools in the amount of $17 million. Notes that an Education and Culture Committee work session is scheduled for February 20th, 2025. That committee work session will be rescheduled to a later date. Thank you, Madam President.
Great. Thank you very much for those announcements. Our first agenda item this morning is a briefing on the current and future plans for zero waste in the county. I'd like to welcome our Director of the Department of Environmental Protection and our staff person, Keith Lichenko. Just to set the stage for this a little bit, this is the first opportunity that this council has had for a briefing on current and future plans for zero waste outside of items we may take up during our budget. And what we do, we know here in the county to reduce our waste is a core function of our local government. And so this is an incredibly important function and important update we'll get today. We've invited the Department of Environmental Protection to update the council on the county's progress towards and the future plans for our zero waste management goals, including all parts of our recycling and resource management system. We've also invited representatives from Sugarloaf Citizens Association to share their views on the resource recovery facility on behalf of the organization, as they are a longtime community partner in the county. And we know we've received a number of requests to the council to discuss this topic, and so that's why we are here today for this briefing. Our zero waste efforts pursue our shared goals of reducing and disposing waste in an environmentally and socially responsible way, as well as in a way that is affordable for our residents and we provide a core service here in the county that is efficient, reliable, and modern. We have heard a great deal of interest from folks on these topics, including regular and frequent correspondence. I want to emphasize that today is a briefing. The council will not be taking any action today. Separately, we did receive from the county executive's office the solid waste management plan. That is a 10-year plan that according to state law, we need to update every 3 years. So we have the 3-year update. We need to hold a public hearing on that, which will be on February 11th, and residents can come to the public hearing, view that on YouTube, submit testimony. We will also be taking up the solid waste management plan in the Transportation and Environment Committee. I will also note for today's briefing, we have a lot on our agenda for today. So if we don't get to everything, Mr. Lichenko provide a very comprehensive packet with links to other technical reports and materials that folks can look at and follow up with our staff, members of the public, and of course our Director of Department of Environmental Protection. How we're going to run the briefing today. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to the chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee for his comments. Then I will have our director of the Department of Environmental Protection and his staff present an overview of the county zero waste management programs. And then we'll invite representatives of the Sugarloaf Citizens Associations to say a few words, and then open it up for council member questions and comments. So with that now, I will turn it over to Chair Lass.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Appreciate you providing this platform and appreciate all the engagement that we've received thus far. When I, as chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee, was informed of the county executive's intentions, I requested that this be a full council discussion because it's important to all of us. And I know that it's important to everybody in the community. The importance of this is such that in 2018, then County Executive Leggett created a task force that he called Aiming for Zero Waste Task Force. And through that organization and the residents and professionals who served on it, a lot of advice and guidance was provided as to how to make Montgomery County greener and cleaner. And that task force, the final report from them became available in 2020. In the year 2020, it is extremely important to note that the incinerator burned 543,708 tons of waste. Nearly a quarter of that was from construction and demolition waste, which is particularly toxic and bad to burn. In recent years, the incinerator's capacity has actually been below the standard level, which has required increased repair and maintenance costs from the county. We, as a community and as local government, have been working diligently to upgrade our environmental regulations and standards and ability to reduce the waste stream at all levels. And I just want to highlight one aspect that we've been working on, and it's food waste. Montgomery County generates approximately 147,000 tons of food waste every year. And through the capital budget investment in the organics processing facility, through our investment in curbside residential composting, which we continue to expand, we're bending the curve, and we need to do more, absolutely. And we are making investments so that we reduce the waste stream, we increase recycling, and we are able to close the incinerator. That is my goal. That is the shared goal of many others. We've attested to that in many ways, and I know that it does not seem like that is happening, but we are working diligently towards it. And so I appreciate the council president providing this platform. I very much appreciate all the community engagement to hold us accountable towards that. And with that, I look forward to the conversation that we're going to have today, and that will continue to make sure that Montgomery County is greener and cleaner and the incinerator gets closed. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Chair Glass. Now I'll turn it over to Director Monger for his comments.
Good morning, and thank you, Council President Stewart, Vice President Jawando, Chair Glass, and all council members for the opportunity to brief you this morning on the county's aiming for zero waste efforts. Nothing says Happy New Year quite like aiming for zero waste, so Happy New Year. I want to start by acknowledging this morning, as Director of the Department of Environmental Protection, my name's John Monger, and it's just a deep honor to be working on these issues here in Montgomery County. I also want to acknowledge the many folks who are in the room and watching online today from the community. I and the DEP team have the privilege of working alongside so many people across our entire county on these important issues. And aiming for zero waste requires engagement and action across our terrific and diverse county. Progress requires all of us to be taking action. I look forward to broadening engagement on this topic, and to the many of you who are already involved, I want to say thank you for your attention, for your dedication, and for your passion. Much of what we're going to talk about today is about timing. And council members, I hope you walk away today with a distinct understanding of how the county is working, as Chair Glass said, as quickly as possible to aim for zero waste, to transition to a different materials management system, and to close the resource recovery facility. As you'll hear from our engineers, the timelines for these changes are significant and our schedule is ambitious. The engineering realities of a system of this scale often require 10 years or more to make a change along these lines. Sitting here this morning, we now have 6 remaining until the end of the extended contract for our transportation and resource recovery facility. I'm a lawyer, so you don't want me doing your math, but you can obviously note that's a big difference in how quickly we have to move as a county. That's why the county's initiated an aggressive schedule to stand up an alternative system to handle the county's waste and close the RRF as quickly as possible. So my message about timing this morning is twofold. Number one, implementation of any new system for handling our trash will take a minimum of approximately 5 years, according to our engineers, meaning the county must continue to rely on the existing system for another 5 years until a new system is implemented. While I know these timelines may be disappointing to some listening today, I want to be very clear in stating that these timelines are informed by engineering realities and operational imperatives. Number two, and relatedly, but perhaps importantly as well, given the amount of work involved in the systems changes, time is really of the essence. We have to move quickly. And the county And as I'll lay out this morning, there's a series of key near-term actions the county needs to take in order to accomplish lasting change. To be direct, any delay in implementation risks prolonging the county's reliance on incineration. That's why you'll see in my presentation a number of deadlines for key county actions required to effectively transition our MSW system as quickly as possible. And the department looks forward to working with council to help ensure the county is able to meet our ambitious schedule and advance this important work. Next slide, please. So here's what we'll talk through today. You've seen this in your packet, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Next slide, please. Thank you, Keith. By way of brief background, the county's aiming for a zero waste effort is essentially about pulling multiple levers to ensure we handle our waste in a sustainable way. So what does that mean? Number one, it means programs that reduce the amount of trash being generated in the first place. Recycling, waste diversion, composting, reducing the purchase and use of single-use products. Single-use plastic bags is a good example of such a product that we work to keep out of the waste stream. Thanks to council support, the county is moving forward with evaluating and implementing construction of an organics management facility that will allow the full-scale residential food scraps recycling program far beyond the pilot currently in place in the county. Number two, it also means a process for evaluating and implementing new systems and processing technologies for how we process our recycling and how we process our trash. Thanks again to council support, we are upgrading the county's recycling center with technologies aided by artificial intelligence that'll significantly improve our efficiency, allow us to better separate materials, reduce contamination, increase material quality and marketing value of those materials. Importantly, and as we'll talk through a lot this morning, the county is also evaluating and implementing alternative waste processing technologies and systems. Once an alternative system is in place, the county plans to close the resource recovery facility. The closure of that facility must and will align with the implementation of a viable alternative system. Next slide, please. Thanks. This slide shows just an example of how much work is going on simultaneously. I want to note that we're pulling all of these levers at the same time. This is truly an all-of-the-above effort to reduce waste and maximize the recovery of valuable commodities. And I'll just pull out one piece on this slide for council member your attention. DEP staff participated in or held 270 educational events in FY24 alone with the community discussing resource management. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this slide gets into why it's the case that a transition of this scale is so complex and the types of infrastructure and integration requirements involved. So you'll see at the top of this slide, continuity of operations is noted. I'd like to take a moment to state that the county takes very seriously our responsibility to ensure uninterrupted and solid waste management services to our residents and our businesses. We are redesigning the system as we implement it. We're building a new airplane as we fly the old one. But through this process and in the future, we will continue to take seriously the need to provide uninterrupted materials management services. Correspondingly, and as also noted on this slide, we expect there to be significant expenses associated with the short-term extension of the RRF and the transfer station. In the coming months, DEP will be providing council additional detailed information on cost and rate impacts of the short-term RRF extension for the necessary capital and infrastructure improvements, which I'll describe in a moment, as well as preliminary findings and budget level costs for near-term projects to support the transition to a new alternative waste management system. This information will, of course, also be under review in spring 2025 as part of the FY26 budget. Next slide, please. So this slide shows all the options that are the types of long-term projects we're talking about. Hopefully this is familiar to folks. It was shared on our website and with council in advance. I want to note that the multiple systems shown under the slide under evaluation are being evaluated and implemented in parallel. So we're doing simultaneous implementation and evaluation of these projects, which includes putting in place an advanced waste processing technology, which would include a component of long haul for residual waste, as well as the potential for long hauling all waste without advanced processing technologies. But I want to be really clear on one point, and this slide shows this. The timelines I'm describing, which necessitate a short-term extension of 5 years, apply regardless of whether the county chooses to implement an advanced waste processing technology or switch entirely to a long-haul system. In other words, either system requires nearly 5 years at a minimum to be in place, according to our engineers. 2 additional quick points here. These timelines are aggressive, according to our engineering analysis. And secondly, if we are able to move any faster, which we are certainly working to do, there is an opportunity in the existing contract for the county to terminate the contract sooner than possible if we're able to stand up one of these alternative systems in the meantime. Excuse me. So just to briefly show what you're looking at, the red line shows the end of the existing contract, and you can see the alternative options down the left side in blue and orange boxes. You can see how much farther past that red dotted line the various options extend. So that shows exactly how much time is needed for the different types of systems under evaluation and how much longer that is than the time we have, certainly between now and April of next year, but even past that. Next slide, please. As I said earlier, any delay in implementation or funding risks jeopardizing the county's ability to close the RRF and transition to a new system in the next 6 years. The following council actions shown on this slide are necessary to keep us on what is an extremely tight schedule. So they're noted in the top right corner of this slide, and they have corresponding marks on the timeline here with the yellow stars, and they're numbered. Number 1, as the council president noted, is approval of the solid waste management plan this winter. The system changes we're talking about won't be accomplished through the solid waste management plan this winter, but the plan does explain our goals for getting there, so it's an important part of the process. Number 2, you're all familiar with this part of the process, funding approval for the preliminary design for the alternative system in May 2025 as part of the budget cycle. Number 3, approving an amendment to the solid waste management plan reflecting the county's new waste processing system would need to be accomplished no later than March of 27. And number 4, funding approval for the final design and construction of a new waste processing system would need to be accomplished no later than May of 2027. Next slide, please. So what are the alternatives exactly? They're laid out on this slide. These are the options for long hauling the county's waste stream with or without an advanced waste processing system as part of a long haul system. The county has examined hauling from both the transfer station in Durwood as well as the RRF site in Dickerson, including hauling by both rail and truck from both sites. This slide, which shows the level of work and complexity associated with the various options, is what I'll walk you through now. So the green check marks indicate necessary capital projects associated with any one of these alternatives. The red arrows indicate capital projects that are both necessary but also have significant increased level of impact and complexity. And as you can see, according to our engineers, the schedule to implement any of these systems is a minimum of 54 months, nearly 5 years. Just to draw your attention to column 2A on this slide, which as represented by the train is shipment by rail from the RRF. As you can see, this option avoids some significant capital projects such as changes to the transfer station building as well as roadway improvements that would be required by some of these other options. But this slide really lays out why the timelines require the amount of time that they do, and happy to go into more detail on this piece as well. Next slide, please. So one of the questions the department's been asked is, why can't we switch quickly to a long-haul system? You've done it before, do it again. So there's a lot of information on this slide, but I'm just going to point you to some of the key pieces. It's also included in your packet. The primary points to understand are, number 1, in the past we have had an emergency where we did need to switch to emergency trucking of all of our waste stream. In that emergency, the county implemented procedures which restricted the types and volumes of waste accepted. It also redirected waste to multiple facilities in the region, including another incinerator in Virginia. These options are not viable as a long-term solution, and this slide lays out on the left side the conditions for the emergency extension, and on the right side, the types of projects that would be involved if we were to try to implement a similar system for a long-term system. And underscores exactly what these differences are and why they're not quick fixes. Next slide, please. In closing, I just want to underscore that as a county committed to progress, we're committed to vigorously aiming for zero waste. And I want to be very, very clear with everyone in the room and everyone watching that we are very focused on evaluating and implementing the options available to the county to help us get there. Additionally, as you can see from this presentation, we are allocating significant resources to this work and are moving forward as quickly as possible to evaluate and implement these changes. I want to thank the Council for continued investment of resources to accomplish this important work. This includes adding resources focused on continuing to strengthen our community engagement. With Council support, the Department has created several new positions focused on zero waste, including a senior level role which will aid in implementation of all the programs I've described, as well as community engagement. And I'd like to take a moment of personal privilege today to introduce Kaylee Lolliker, who's in the audience behind me. Kaylee's here today. Kaylee recently joined yesterday the department to lead our zero waste efforts as chief of zero waste programs. So it's a good week to join the conversation. But I want to underscore something in all seriousness, which is the fact that Kaylee is working for the department is a very big deal. She ran the Land and Materials Administration for the Maryland Department of Environment for 10 years and has well over that many number of years working in this experience. So if we want to talk about moving the county forward, we're putting serious horsepower towards this efforts internally at the department, and we're thrilled to have Kaylee joining us. It's a first of its kind senior level role at the department. Thanks again to Council for the conversation this morning and the opportunity to brief you, and looking forward to further discussion.
Thank you very much, Director Monger. Welcome, Kaylee, to the team. Next, we'll have a few remarks from Mr. Finley and Ms. Greenberger from the Sugarloaf Citizens Association. Press the button. Yep. There you go.
Got it. Thanks very much. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Steve Finley. I'm president of the Sugarloaf Citizens Association. We're very pleased to be here today, and that Council President Stewart convened this briefing and discussion. My colleague, Laura Greenberger, SEA's subject matter expert on this issue, will present our perspective, after which we're very pleased to address any of the questions you may have. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having us here today, and welcome, Kaylee. Yay. Right. We learned yesterday that we have just 5 minutes to present, so we'd like for you all to please look at the packet we prepared and note that it contains a longer statement. Please also review the questions in the first 2 documents in your packet. You can also use those questions today to collect more information for decision making. We are delighted that DEP is working hard developing waste reduction strategies. We've been working with them, providing recommendations to support their efforts. However, we fervently object to the approach they are taking, that all these strategies must be developed before we can stop burning our trash. We don't need to do it that way, and we shouldn't. Incineration is clearly more hazardous than landfilling. Every day we continue to burn, we endanger our community, our children, and the majority Black community in Virginia, where we dump 150,000 tons of toxic ash every year. Their presentation today suggests it would take 7 more years to transition to landfilling. That's the 2 years we have now plus the 5 that Director Monger mentioned. We disagree. First, there is nothing set in stone that says we have to build new waste reduction technologies before we stop incinerating. Second, as you saw in the presentation today, if we had another fire, like we did a few years ago that burned for weeks, and we needed to move quickly to an alternate disposal option, we could do that within a matter of days, as Director Munger mentioned. The Arcadis model, that's the engineers they've hired, shows the contingency plan for Montgomery County. Start trucking our trash directly from Shady Grove to the incinerator in Lorton. While we do not advise sending our trash to another incinerator, please, it would not be difficult to send those trucks down the same road to Maplewood landfill in Virginia. It's open, it's full, it's available. This is one of the 12 landfills that a prior consultant vetted for the county and found safe on environmental justice criteria established by the EPA. 12. Furthermore, since 2017, there have been 4 cases of unexpected incinerator closures around the country, and all of those communities managed to swiftly switch to disposing their trash in area landfills. Miami-Dade County, Hartford, Connecticut, Detroit, Michigan, and nearby Fairfax County. Since 2000, 53 incinerators have permanently closed and diverted their waste to area landfills. We can do this, and it does not need to take 7 years. 2 years ago, the county hired the consultants Zero Waste Associates to provide a roadmap from incineration to landfilling. Your packet has their timeline that meets all legal and administrative steps necessary. They showed how our incinerator could be closed in about 14 months. Following this roadmap, DEP could hire a contractor and start trucking within a year or two and concurrently build out the permanent long-term changes to Shady Grove that Arcadis has identified and you saw in the slides today. We understand this reconfiguring will take some time, but trucking to landfill could begin and the reconfiguration could be completed after the transition begins. So why are we pushing so hard for this to happen now? First and foremost, we want to stop having to breathe in toxic emissions that contribute to cancers, heart disease, and respiratory illness, and further contribute to climate change. Why aren't these concerns being prioritized? And why isn't a concurrent plan being implemented now? Second, in contract negotiations, Reworld, formerly known as Covanta, asked for $100 million to keep the aging incinerator maintained over the 5-year extension. Why would we invest $100 million into a plant that we are planning to decommission? That taxpayer money could go to starting the transition to trucking and paying for the long-term waste reduction strategies DEP is developing. Third, keeping the incinerator open is a barrier to moving forward on food scrap composting. SCA would be willing to modify our settlement agreement to allow food composting at the yard trim facility if DEP sets a fixed incinerator closure date. You, County Council, have already allocated $28 million for that expansion. This could start immediately, thus further reducing the trash that would need to go to landfill. If the DEP rejects this offer, then the next best site is Site 2 in Dickerson. That site would cost an additional $60 million, and take many years to build out. As taxpayers, having to foot that additional bill would be outrageous to us. In closing, clearly there are many, many unanswered questions. We ask that you not just accept DEP's contract extension request outright. Please prioritize the health and well-being of your constituents, our environment, and use taxpayer dollars more appropriately. Ask DEP to provide answers to the questions we've provided and hold a public hearing so that your constituents can be heard. At this point, the best path forward should be to deny the contract extension and give DEP time to come back to you with a better plan that includes a detailed contingency plan for immediate haul from Shady Grove to an acceptable landfill and rolling out the infrastructure improvements over time. No major incinerator investments. No more than a 1-year contract extension. This gives them 2.5 years from now to pivot. 2.5 years. Issuing an RFP to identify contractors and the costs for hauling from Shady Grove to acceptable landfills. And finally, setting a date for closure so that the food composting facility can be built quickly. We hope that you will take more time to study this and find better solutions because, as we have noted, they exist and they can be done in a shorter time frame. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finley and Ms. Greenberger. Appreciate that and also appreciate the packet. We will turn now to council member questions. You can take a seat behind you if you'd like, and if council members have questions for you, we'll bring you back up. And I'd like to bring back up Director Monger, and if he wants to bring some of his team up to kind of kick us off. And really thank you to everyone who is here, and I very much appreciate the materials we have. We have a lot of very detailed materials to go through, and I appreciate the succinct and to the point presentations we've received today. Director Monger, do you want to introduce, I know you introduced Kaylee before, but the other folks on your team?
Absolutely. Before I do so, I'll just say I wish that everyone in this county knew how lucky they were to have the people sitting to my right and left, as well as the many people at the department and our various sites around the county working on their behalf. We have a tremendous team, and I'm really grateful for council's support in helping us build it out. So to my right, I have Jeff Seltzer, DEP Deputy Director, Kaylee Laliker, who I mentioned, Steve Lazinski, who is overseeing our project implementation, and Willie Wayner, who is the chief of our Recycling and Resource Management Division. So we're happy to be with you this morning.
Great. Mr. Lachenko, before we get into our questioning, I just wanted, since you put together the packet and have been dealing with these issues, wanted to see if you had anything to add to what was presented already.
Just to reiterate that there are several different processes occurring here. We have the contract extension that you heard about. That was conveyed to both, the request was conveyed to the executive and the council. You also have the 10-year plan, the water solid waste management plan that you mentioned earlier that's going to public hearing on February 11th. And then we expect also, and it's noted in the packet, a lot of this analysis regarding the alternative disposal options. We do expect that information to come back with an executive recommendation not early enough for the current 10-year plan amendment, but later so that the council will have all the information it needs in front of it to make an informed decision going forward. As you heard from Director Monger, these are very, detailed, complex processes that need to be worked out, and there will be significant issues regarding operations, costs, environmental impacts, racial equity issues, all those issues that the council identified in the prior 10-year plan, the current approved 10-year plan, issues that need to be reviewed in this context. So staff just would encourage council members to keep that in mind as we go forward, and that the council has not been able to review this information yet. So it's you hear a lot of conceptual issues today, timeline issues, potential alternatives, but what we don't have is the detailed analysis yet of all these alternatives, and that's what we'll need in order for the council to move forward.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lichenko. I'm going to kick us off just to ask our director again, understanding the concerns, and I know you have met many times and your staff have with members of our community to talk about the impacts of the RRF and the need to switch to alternatives for our solid waste system as soon as possible. And you have talked about the commitment of our department to meet this goal and the plans and resources to move forward. Can you just tell us again regarding the engineering analysis? I think that was one of the charts you showed us, how long a transition to an alternative would take. I just want to kind of get at that piece of it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Council President. So this is on slide 6 of your packet. And according to engineering analysis performed by the county, it's a minimum of 4.5 to 5 years approximately for any alternative system to be put in place. And I want to underscore that that's also an ambitious timeline for us with us moving forward as quickly as possible, which we are doing.
Right. And you did say that as soon as the next couple of months during the budget, we will First, the Transportation and Environment Committee will be discussing this, and then the full council for items in the budget to move us in that direction.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sure I'll have other questions, but I want to send it to my colleagues. I'll first start with Chair of our Transportation and Environment Committee, Chair Glass.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Director Munger, thank you for that presentation, and to your entire team, and welcome Ms. Laliker, Kaylee. Appreciate you being here. What a great week to start. And also, Mr. Finley and Ms. Greenberger, thank you very much for your testimony, and for members of the community for being here as well. Last year in 2024, I was appointed to the EPA's Local Government Advisory Committee, which is a group of about 30 people from across the country, mostly mayors, state senators, county council members, and commissioners, working with the EPA on best practices for local environmental stewardship. One of the committees I was on, I'm not sure how much longer it will be around given this current administration, but as of today, I am still a member of that committee. One of the committees I am on is reducing plastic waste. And we're talking a lot about how local communities can reduce the waste stream and eliminate plastic waste. And part of that work was also federal regulations on the industry to do better. I suspect that has fallen by the wayside, making our job harder. But I'll continue serving on that committee as long as I am able, working with others for best practices for greener communities across the country. And towards that goal, Ms. Greenberger, I appreciated your testimony, and specifically the openness that you presented regarding the composting facility and the agreement that exists. Very much appreciate that. I understand the spirit in which that is provided. So we here on the council and the county executive and the CIP have provided funding for that organic composting facility. And there are a lot of other things that we have provided funding for, particularly the transfer station. Again, I mentioned it in my opening comments, the residential composting. So Director Munger, what are the investments that we have made in the operating budget and also in the 6-year capital budget? What are the dollars of our investments right now?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Chair Glass, and for your leadership, both locally and at EPA on these important issues. So, at a high level, the county has made very, very significant investments across our recycling and resource management system, thanks to council and the county executive support. Over the past 3 years, we've invested approximately $170 million in facility upgrades, equipment upgrades, systems improvements, and all of these are with the goal of improving our systems, maximizing efficiency, advancing the fundamental goal of aiming for zero waste and making our systems better. There's very strong safety components in each of those that we've also are making continuous efforts to upgrade across all of our sites.
So 170 million, you said?
Correct.
And so the central question that's being presented to us is why are we not moving all options forward at the same time? Is that something that you're exploring, or as we're making these investments, from your perspective, are the investments needed first? What can you explain the complex dynamics as Mr. Lovchenko stated earlier?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. So the options laid out on slide 6 of your packet, which lays the options out down the left column of the page and then also has the timelines for them on the bars across of it. Again, that's page 6 of your packet. I want to underscore that these are not mutually exclusive options. So as I mentioned in my testimony, we are looking at systems for hauling our waste that incorporate long haul. We're also looking at systems that incorporate advanced processing and long haul, but we're not looking at one at the exclusion of the other. And I just want to underscore that any piece of any system to which we transition to will need to include some component of long haul for whatever residual waste is left. So, like I said, the timelines presented here and the options the county are evaluating include options that both include advanced waste processing technologies added on, but you'll also see that on the timelines laid out here what the timelines are for solely long hauling our waste.
Okay, thank you. I know my colleagues have lots of questions as well, but I just want to close by going back to the dollars and cents in the budget. As chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee, I will speak for myself and say I was extremely disappointed that last year in the FY25 budget, not a dollar was added for any new programming within the Department of Environmental Protection that would have helped advance some of these goals of reducing zero waste, of making our community more energy efficient, and by providing more renewable resources as well. And so I hope as the county executive continues working on the FY26 budget, and once we get it on March 15th, I hope that we have another robust conversation about putting our dollars where they are needed, and that is clearly within the Department of Environmental Protection. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Chair Glass. Next, I'll turn to Councilmember Sayles.
Good morning, and thank you, Director Munger and members of the Sugarloaf Citizens Association. Thank you so much for your continued engagement and your presence. This work is so important, and we've all been working on this. I really appreciate Mr. Lovchenko for attending all of the air quality meetings with Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments to ensure that we're not only looking at this locally, but also as a regional issue. And with a hostile administration at work, trying to roll back the progress that we are trying to make here in Montgomery County, it's so important that we continue as a united front in addressing the issue. We all want this incinerator gone. We all campaigned on its removal, and we welcome Director Munger here from our last administration, who was in lockstep with us in that endeavor. And so I just wanted to follow up on a point made by our Ms. Greenberger about the 12 alternatives evaluated. I know that we evaluated 12 sites, and now we're bringing in Arcadis to do what exactly, and what happened to the findings from the 12 alternatives that were evaluated.
Councilmember, thank you so much for the question. I thank you for your continued interest and focus on this really important issue. It's very much appreciated. I think your question relates to, if I'm understanding correctly, the destination landfills that could be available to the county if we were to select to long haul all of our waste.
Yes.
And the county is in the process of evaluating, and this is what the timelines I laid out get to, evaluating how long it would take to move to various landfills. But I just want to make an important point here. The timelines I laid out are agnostic to the destination. Mm-hmm. So the mere, well, I shouldn't say mere, the act of switching systems will take the amount of years laid out in my presentation, without distinction between the destination that it goes to. Now, it could take longer depending on some of the destinations. Obviously, if you're shipping waste farther, it takes longer. There's also nearby destinations, but the piece I want to draw attention to is that there's key operational considerations at our own facilities in order to make the transition to long haul our waste, which is really what the timelines I'm speaking to get to.
So are we eliminating the option for long hauling to any of the 12 sites in order to focus solely on full replacement of the system?
Let's see. I want to make sure I'm answering the question you're actually asking. Would you mind repeating it?
Yeah, so we evaluated 12 alternative sites. Are we eliminating those sites and just moving forward to focus solely on full replacement of the incinerator? Because in the meantime, we could be, exporting our trash to another landfill. So are we eliminating that as an option completely in order to focus all of our attention on full replacement of the incinerator?
Sure. No, I thank you for the question, and I'm going to speak to the spirit of your question, and please tell me if this is responsive. As I said, any alternative system we move to will need to require a long haul component for any residual waste. That's whether we ship all of our waste, or that's whether we add an advanced processing technology on the front end, which could help us significantly reduce the volume of waste. So I think the answer to your question is that we acknowledge that that's an important reality, that there would need to be a landfill destination incorporated with these options that are under consideration.
Okay, and of those 12 sites evaluated, what were the outcomes of those sites evaluated? Did we say none of them work for Montgomery County currently, or they will eventually? What was the findings?
So as I mentioned in my presentation, we're planning to present to council the analysis of the systems that are under analysis this spring, okay. Which will include information on what our options are with respect to landfills that would need to be incorporated with the various options.
Oh, thank you. And you also mentioned the significant outreach and engagement that took place over the past few years with various stakeholders. Do you have a list of the stakeholders you all partnered with? Any community feedback that you are retaining to help influence next steps?
Well, many are in the audience today, so I'd ask you to look behind me. And watching, and I hope watching online. I just want to say, as I said in my remarks, that I think that this is a very important system for everybody who lives, works, and plays in our county. And when we talk about what the system should look like, and we talk about how it operates, getting community input is absolutely fundamental. And as I said, the department has been very focused on adding resources, including Kaylee sitting next to me, but others as well, to make sure we're continuing to grow our ability to make our stakeholder engagement as robust as possible. I mentioned in my remarks the number of educational events that the department has participated in over the last year. It's hugely significant. We have entire dedicated staff that are focused on education and outreach around these issues. And I want to be very clear when I state my goal is to be as inclusive as possible in these conversations.
Okay. Because I hope this isn't the full spectrum of everyone that's been engaged. And I'm not sure where feedback is being received. If there's a website for residents to submit forms, I'm sure I'm not alone. We've received hundreds of emails. And so is there a repository where we are receiving public comment after all of these public engagement and educational engagements?
Yeah, so the department has created an Aiming for Zero Waste website where materials and reports are created. You can also find information about meetings that have occurred on this topic. And there's also an opportunity for the public to submit information on that website.
Oh, good.
So, you know, the goal is to be sharing information with as many people as possible on this important topic.
Can you remind us of that website, please, for all the millions at home watching?
Yeah, we're happy to get that to folks.
Oh, no, if you can state it on record so the millions at home watching can.
Okay. I'm happy to pull that up. It'll take me a minute.
That's fine, because I have one more question. The timeline indicates that closing the incinerator will take approximately 30 months. That's approximately 2.5 years. How far along are we in this process?
Yeah, so I would direct you to slide 6 of your packet, which is our engineer's analysis of what the relevant timelines are. The purple line shows where we are in the process, and the timeline, it's juxtaposed against the timelines for the various different options. So I want to underscore that I think that speaks to where we are in the process, but I'll note that it really does depend on which option the county seeks to pursue. As you can see, there's different timelines associated with the different options.
I don't have a purple line on.
It's the one on the left. I'm sorry. The purple and the red sort of look like they're the same color. So the line on the left, the dotted line, is where we are today.
The red line coming
that's
down.
That's where we are today. That's
Okay.
correct, council member.
Okay. And then
the timelines associated with the options. The options are listed down the left side of the page in the blue and orange boxes. And then the timelines associated with implementing those options are laid out on the corresponding lines that extend to the right.
So is there a line about engagement with the community about the options before implementation?
So I think that cuts across all of these options, council member. I think that's a part of the process no matter which option the county chooses to pursue.
Okay, because it would be helpful to include information about any upcoming events and opportunities so that as the public is weighing in and monitoring our progress, we can, be accountable to showing transparency in the process and ensuring that they're included and engaged all throughout. Thank you, Director Munger and team, and welcome.
Thank you, council member.
Thank you, Councilmember Sayles. I'll turn it now to Council Vice President Jawando.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Munger and team, and thank you to the Sugarloaf folks and everyone that's here. And glad to hear the millions watching at home has continued to this council. Thank you, Councilmember Sayles. So a couple just rapid fire that I think you've said, but I want to get very clear on this. Look, we all want to move to a cleaner system. Time changes. When the incinerator is put in, that was thought to be the cleaner system. We obviously, as we know, that's not. Technology has moved forward. There's things that are happening, these emissions that we want to get rid of for folks in the neighborhood, not to mention the ash that's being transported. So we have this timeline of the current contract ending, right? And then there's a tension here that you heard from folks. Why can't you do it faster? Why is it going to take this long? Why can't you do it concurrently? Why can't you take the trucks and start moving it while you're doing some of these other things, which no one's disagreeing are bad things, moving to the new system, updating the technologies. So could you just speak really clearly, and in this answer what I think is your answer, how long you're proposing to extend the contract, and why you don't think you can do it concurrently or more quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Vice President Jawando. I appreciate the question, and I think it's a very important one. So just to sort of start from the fundamental premise, in order to close one system, we will first need to have a replacement system in place, just given the volumes of trash that the county processes each year. So what we have done is aligned the timelines of implementing the alternative systems, which is what's laid out here, with closure of the existing RRF, which I think we can very much speak to the fact that that's a shared goal. So when we talk about why the timelines are what they are, I think that's what's laid out on slide 8 here, because when there's essentially a number of infrastructure changes and improvements which make the timelines as long as they are. I know that's frustrating. It's frustrating and disappointing because we're all interested in moving forward as fast as possible. But to give you an example of what types of projects are involved with the various options, as I mentioned on slide 8, if it's possible to pull that up, you can see that the option of shipping by rail from the RRF has fewer capital project components, and it avoids some of the types of projects that have an increased complexity associated with them, which are marked by the red arrows. So some of these options we will be able to do faster than others. That's why we have assessed them all, so we can make a decision that incorporates both the timing considerations, which are very important to us as a county, and also the operational realities and costs associated with making those changes.
And so because of that, your suggestion on how long to extend the current incinerator contract is?
So the timelines that our engineers have provided to us for transitioning to a new system are at minimum 4.5 years. Those are ambitious schedules, which is why the extension request is 5 years.
Right. So you're recommending the 5 years, which is what has been requested by the company.
Not by the company. The company is with whom we have the service agreement to perform the work, but I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question correctly.
It was mentioned that you have to invest in money to keep the current system running. Talk about the relationship between the extension of the contract and that investment.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Councilmember. That's a good question. So I know for a fact that most of you don't pay your staffs enough, and they're driving around in old beat-up cars. So, I want to just underscore that because we've been working to...
It's the county executive's fault. He pays you guys a lot.
You all know who I'm talking about on your staffs, too. I just want to point out that because we are actively working to close the facility, we're obviously also working to limit the investments in that facility to only those that are absolutely necessary. And so the investments that we are contemplating for as part of the short-term extension are limited to those that are necessary only to keep the facility running for that short term.
Okay, so that figure that was mentioned, that $100 million, is that the correct figure?
So, like I said, we're planning to provide detailed information to council over the next few months and in the budget process this spring, with more information on what that looks like. We expect the costs will be significant, but at the same time, we're also working to do everything possible to make those costs as minimal as possible.
All right, which I appreciate and I agree with. And I just want to double tap on the community engagement. You guys have done a lot. You've been very transparent and communicative to our offices. Obviously, that's one of those things that you have to continue to work on throughout this process, because it's such a big deal, because it's such a significant investment, because so many people care about it, including all of us and all of your staff. When we get those presentations, I think the more community meetings you can have, partner with us, do them on your own, I think the better, so people can understand. And just really that point of the timing of why can't you do things concurrently, I think we really need to put a fine point on explaining the science, math, logistics. I hear what you're saying, that it can't be done, and I know there's a lot of pre-work that's been done by your engineers and others, but we need to get to that level of specificity with us and with the community so that they understand, because I believe you that we all have the same goal of shutting it as soon as possible and shifting to a new system. But I think that's a big disagreement, and I think it's a core part of this issue. So we just need to make sure we're really clear. And it might not people might not agree, but we need to make sure we're really clear on the why of that. So
Thank you,
I
Council
appreciate
Vice
that.
President.
Thank you, Madam President.
Yeah. Thank you, Council Vice President Joando, and that is exactly why we are here today, because we've been having a lot of these conversations, and this council has not had the opportunity to spend the time to really hear about these issues and to go more in depth. And like I said before, the Sugarloaf Citizens Association has provided us with a packet. There are a number of links to other documents and things for us to look at. And so today is a briefing, but I'm sure it is not the end of a conversation that we will continue to be having. I have a few more colleagues in the queue. Councilmember. Oh, I'm sorry. You got to jump back in. All right. Then Councilmember Balcom goes next.
I was premature in hitting my button, and when that happens, you get kicked out. So thank you, Director Monger, and certainly the Sugarloaf Citizens Association, Ms. Greenberger, Mr. Finley, thank you for being here, and for everyone else that's here today in the audience and watching at home. I really appreciate you being here. As several of my colleagues have asked the critical question as to why we can't move forward concurrently, and I think that as Councilmember Vice President Joando mentioned, you know, we need that specificity of why. And I think that perhaps it's not all or nothing. I think that reducing as much waste that goes into the incinerator is important. So if things can be done concurrently, I think we need to see that. Although this is a countywide issue, and I appreciate all my colleagues being very invested in this decision, as the district council member, I just want to convey my deep frustration with the timeline presented here today. And we've had many conversations in the past 6 months about how this is going to go down. A promise was made to the community to close the incinerator. The level of strategic and operational planning that you've laid out today should have started 7, 8, 9 years ago when that promise was made, and it wasn't. And we've spent years of the community saying a promise has been made, and we didn't hold our end of the bargain. Many of us here and there weren't here when that promise was made, and so I know that you're just as frustrated as I am, perhaps, that the community certainly is far more frustrated than any of us. So there is a level of frustration, certainly in the community, and from we now have to make this decision, and we've been put in an impossible situation. So I just want to put it out there. And I appreciate the questions of my colleagues. The question of why does the extension need to be 5 years? I think you just answered that in terms of if it looks like 4.5 years. But I do want to have more information on, can we do some things concurrently? What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Council Member, for your focus on this important issue. And I just want to add a +1 to your statement on the level of interest and frustration with the timelines to date. And, you know, I think it's really important that we keep that in mind when we talk about our path forward, because we do need to make up for lost time, and we do need to move forward as quickly as possible. And I understand there's frustration and interest around that. So I just wanted to first start by acknowledging that. You know, to your second question, and I'm glad you brought it back up. I just want to be clear when I say that the options that we're evaluating, we are evaluating simultaneously, so that the council will be able to make a decision about how these options compare to one another. So as I noted, to be specific about what that looks like, so we have evaluated long haul options for our waste stream that include advanced waste processing technologies and that do not. The systems that do include waste processing technologies will still need to include a component of long haul for the residual waste. So I just want to underscore the operational nexus between these alternatives and that we are looking at them together. And I just want to underscore that while there may be different pieces of the systems that we ultimately choose to select, we're evaluating all of those, which is what we'll be bringing to the council to review so that you're able to make an informed decision on the path forward. But I just wanted to note that we're looking at these in parallel.
I appreciate that. The issue of cost. I know we're going to get the cost estimates in the budget process. It's again frustrating to not have that information while we're making this decision. So as soon as we can get firm numbers, and I know you have to go through a process with the county executive, but I feel like we need to have those numbers as well during this decision process as opposed to the budget decision process. So whatever you can do that would be helpful. The other question is the food scrap composting program. Just very briefly, where you are with that, and certainly the relationship with the Sugarloaf Citizens Association in that discussion.
Absolutely, Councilmember. Thank you. So, there's a saying at our department that the future is about food. And when I talk to the public about what they can do, one of the places I often start is start in your own kitchen. Start when you're at the grocery store. Don't overbuy. Don't overserve the amount of plates on your food. And when you do have food scraps left over, don't put them in the trash. That is on the consumer behavior side. At the same time, as I think you all know, there's also a key operational piece here where the county has the ability to compost food scraps so that we can keep them out of the waste stream. As I think you know, we have a pilot in place right now. We're looking to grow that pilot because this is something that everybody who lives, works, and plays in the county can and should be doing, and we need to have a facility that allows us to meet the moment and provide the services which we currently do not have. So I think I want to acknowledge just the centrality of this, and you can see it in our waste composition study too, that a significant percentage of the waste stream is food, and we don't want it to be like that. I'll note that some of the technologies that are under consideration for processing our waste also have the ability to pull out organics. So that said, so again, sort of back to what I said at the beginning of my presentation, we're looking at recycling and composting programs to keep things out of the trash, and I'll come back to that. We're also looking at technologies to pull valuable content out of the trash, even if people do the wrong thing and throw it in there. So I just want to acknowledge that there's multiple ways to get at this problem, and we're evaluating and implementing all of them because it's very important. And I also mentioned we have significant outreach dedicated to outreach and education on this topic because it's a continual discussion with the community members. To your point about the facility itself, we're actively evaluating what options are available to the county to build this facility as quickly as possible. We needed it yesterday. So we're very grateful for council's support. I know we had the chance to take many of you to a sister facility in Prince George's. I'd love to also take you all to the sister facility in Howard County. They have an impressive facility. It's not a good feeling to be lapped by our neighbors. So this is not a complex project. These are not food scraps. Organics management facilities are not inherently complex things to build. We just need to move forward with building one as quickly as possible. There's multiple sites, as I've noted as is noted in the budget term sheet for the project, under consideration. But I share your encouragement, council member, that this is something we need to do very quickly, and any barrier towards us moving forward should be looked at very critically.
Okay, thank you. And then I just want to mention what the chair of T&E Committee Glass mentioned was we will be looking at the comprehensive solid waste management plan in the T&E committee. And I just, for those of you with signs and your request, we will be having a public hearing on February 11th in regards to solid waste management plan. And certainly the what we do with the solid waste is part of that. So please keep that in mind and put that in your calendars. One last question. One of the questions that I received was the ownership, transferring the title of the incinerator to the county. Is that something that you're looking at doing?
Yes, so that's something that the ownership chain of custody does contemplate as part of this process, and happy to double back with you and your teams with more of the underlying contractual setup if you're interested.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the indulgence.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. Thanks very much. First, I want to say that this department does excellent work, and I have been very impressed and grateful to the work that you all have done on both short-term issues and constituent questions, as well as looking at how we can move the county in the right direction on relatively limited funds. So thank you for that. And because of that, I would love to say that I just trust your judgment and let's just sign whatever you tell us to sign and move on. But unfortunately, that's not the job. So I am going to ask the same questions because I am seeking the same clarity, and I feel like I need it before I can, sign off on this. So I'm still confused about why we would not be able to, understanding that, of course, you need to figure out a long haul component of whatever plan we end up moving, right? But in between, whenever that's ready to go, and now, or when this contract ends, why could we not shift away from the incinerator and move to a temporary, long-term, long-haul option in between there? Is that a financial thing, a logistics thing? And if it's a logistics thing, then I think this brings us back to the question of, why have we been able to make a quick pivot in case of, say, a fire or other emergency, but we couldn't make a pivot with almost a year and a half of lead time here?
Councilmember, thank you for the question and for the kind words. I just want to underscore what I've said at the beginning of my remarks, which is we are moving forward as quickly as possible to make this transition. So what does that look like with respect to the options you're describing here? And I want to acknowledge the example that you're referencing about what we've done in emergency short-term situations. So I would go back to slide 9 in my presentation, which lays out how short-term operations in an emergency have differed from long-term operations, and just the differences in the programs in the operations are highlighted in green on that slide. It speaks essentially to the fact that there are requirements that the county needs to follow for a long-term system that do not exist in a short-term emergency. The volumes are different. The operational considerations are correspondingly different. There's different legal options, but I think this slide tells the story in more specificity about the specific nuances of the types, and there's timelines associated with each of the steps in this process, and the parentheticals you can see at the end, which is why the timeline for the larger systems change is so much different than the short-term change, which is so the long-term change being on the right side of this slide, and the short-term emergency scenario is on the left column there.
Thank you. Okay, so this is really important because this is kind of the whole question. Could you talk can you give us a couple examples from the slide to help us really understand why this would be a logistical impossibility?
Sure. I think I'm going to turn to my technical experts here because that's the nature of your question, and I think they'll be able to speak better to it than myself. Great. Would somebody seated to my left like to respond?
Yeah, how you doing? Steve Lazinski again. So to walk through this table a bit. So on the short-term emergency operations side, the county pulled several levers at the same time to move trash quickly to regional facilities. Restrictions on limited inbound tonnage, collections were redirected to alternative facilities, as well as MSW at the transfer station were transported to multiple regional facilities. A transfer station, a landfill, an incinerator that was approximately 37 miles away in Virginia, which allows tractor trailers a 2-hour cycle time to go down and come back and be ready for the next load or day's work. When you do a long-term operations, there's larger volumes of trash. There's to handle that type of infrastructure long term, depending on if you're doing at the transfer station or at the RRF long haul. You'd have to make infrastructure improvements, whether it's at the transfer building to switch, from compacted rail container loading to open top tractor trailer loading. That's a different mechanical mechanism. Improvements for the rail yard to stage more rail containers and rolling stock, to accommodate those longer travel distances. On the bottom, you can see route conditions potentially available for long haul. One of the facilities that I think Ms. Greenberger mentioned was the Maplewood facility. Arcadis did look at that under a tractor trailer or rail long haul option, and it's a 9-hour cycle time or an 8-day cycle time for various logistical issues over the roadway at the receiving facility, dumping on the working face, as well as rail haul to and from the facility. So that entails more rolling stock and longer travel times to get the material out day to day. And I think John mentioned capital projects. Capital projects typically follow a prescribed format. Procurement, design, permitting, local and state. Depending on what option you go, there's state roadway, or you may have to do CSX, or rail line improvements and permitting. Those are all complex projects and negotiations, with those entities. There's also the rolling stock fabrication, whether it's tractor trailers, or rail cars. There's also a CDL, component if you're doing over the road transport, and regionally, there's CDL shortages, for drivers. And then, it really comes up to, the timing to implement all of those phased implementations for a capital project, which is 4 to 5 years. I hope that helped.
Yeah, thank you for that. Considering that the contract extension is paired with a significant investment, we've heard $100 million cited. You all are still working through the details of what that would actually be. But if we're anywhere in that vicinity, that's a lot of money for something that we're not going to be using in a few years, as you know. So I have to assume that you would not be asking for that if you did not feel that this was still the best plan. But that said, as a layperson, it's hard to put that together. If we had all that money and we put it towards solving some of the issues that you just raised here, is there any way that that's doable? And so, that's helpful, but understanding really down to the nitty gritty and the dollars and cents. And I know that you all have done these analyses and that you are, trying to save us from ourselves, I think, by not going into that level of detail. But I think we really do need that level of detail, a comparison of, what it would look like to, if this was not going to get signed, what would that look like? How would you deal with that? What's the minimum investment that it would require to, to keep our waste management system functioning and not have residents face a disruption? If you could provide something so that we can do a real comparison and have that, to talk to the community about as we make this decision, I could say for me that would be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely happy. As I said, we plan on coming back to council with additional cost information on all these various scenarios, and so happy to provide that information, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lukey.
Thank you, and thank you to Councilmember Mink, who asked a lot of the questions I was about to ask that are more nuts and boltsy. But without asking a question, with more delivering a message, I wanted to sort of give you a little context for my thoughts about these types of issues. And I know Councilmember Balcom has heard me talk to her about this before. So I grew up in South Jersey, in what was farmland at a certain point. But I grew up in a triangulated area where there were 3 massive landfills, right? And we were the dumping ground for Philadelphia. two of those landfills, the Lipari landfill, which was known for being the receiving place of Roman Haas's chemical waste, ended up with people having low birth rates and high rates of leukemia. The Kramer landfill, which is another Superfund site, had high cadmium levels in the water. And then the third, the Kinsley landfill, which was shut down after I left South Jersey to go to college in the 90s. So I am particularly sensitive to the notion that our waste becomes someone else's problem, right? And I am thankful for everything that the department is doing to get to zero waste and the goals that we're trying to work on there. And certainly 2 of the 4 farmers markets that receive food scraps currently as locations are in my district. One seasonal in Durwood, one is year-round in Olney. But we do need more of that. Because those habits have to become more ingrained in everyone. So I am very much looking forward to seeing options that do involve, as you noted, advanced processing technology on the front end to minimize the amount of waste that has to be hauled elsewhere and end up in landfills. Because it is environmentally responsible, and we need to do everything we can to minimize those impacts, to whether it's to our community locally or to other communities that will be receiving this. And I certainly want to acknowledge all of the community members who have come out today to talk and to raise their concerns and their issues. And I know this has been a very, very long struggle. But I do hope we are looking very intentionally at that so that we are not simply just making our issue someone else's issue. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember, and thank you for sharing your own personal story as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I will try my very best to be brief. I want to thank everyone who's here and everyone who's been involved with this. I know there's sincere concerns, and I know that we're going to all work on them, and I appreciate the department as well. Kaylee, you've been here for a day. Why haven't you solved this? I mean, what'd you do yesterday, as an example? But in all seriousness, this is an issue that we have got to deal with. We've always, and we use the term kick the can down the road. We're the road that this can is being kicked in, and we need to stop this. And to the earlier points, we weren't here when we lived here, but we weren't in the decision-making part of this in any area. But we're here now, and we need to make certain that the time frames that are made, the promises that are made, need to be adhered to and really need to be promises. And so I look forward to your continued leadership. But I do want to ask, what happens to the waste management in Montgomery County if we don't extend this contract?
Thank you, Councilmember, and also thank you for the context in which you're putting this decision, because I think it really speaks to the amount of time and effort that the county's been spending on it for many years, and the level of urgency to addressing the problem. So I really appreciate those remarks. I think the answer to your question is best illustrated by the timeline that I laid out on slide 6. I think you can see on that slide exactly how much longer the implementation timelines are for the various options than the dotted red line on the right, which is the end of the existing service agreement in April of 2026. So as I said at the outset of my remarks, transitions of this scale, according to our engineers, often take 10 years. We're trying to do it in a much shorter amount of time, but as you can see by the length of the lines and how far they extend past the timeline of April 2026, you can see that that it will take much longer than the time we have to put these options in place.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam President.
Councilmember Mink.
Sorry, one quick add-on to the request to put together some kind of analysis of what it would look like if the contract wasn't extended and you had to figure out how to fill that gap and what that would cost us and why and so on. I just wanted to lift up one of the questions that we got from the Sugarloaf Citizens Association and see if ask if it makes sense to include that, or just request that it be included in the evaluation if it makes sense to do so at that time, and if it doesn't, then to let us know why. But they noted that keeping the incinerator open is a barrier to moving forward on food scrap composting. The SCA would be willing to modify our settlement agreement with the county to allow closed cover food scrap composting at the Yardrum facility in Dickerson if DEP sets a legally binding closure date for the incinerator. The county council has already allocated $28 million for that expansion. This could be started immediately. If not, then the next best site for food waste composting identified by EA Engineering would be Site 2 in Dickerson, but creating a facility there could cost an additional $60 million and take many years to build out. And so just requesting that if that could be included in that analysis, that we would potentially have the benefit of being able to move forward on food waste composting there. And if it doesn't make sense to do so, if you could just let us know why at that time as well.
Happy to provide more information.
Thank you.
All right, I am not seeing any other, Councilmember Bell.
Just a quick for those looking at the packet, we need to update the packet. There's the slides that were presented today are slightly different. There are a couple additional slides, so I think maybe one additional slide. So we'll make sure that the packet is updated to include all the slides.
Yep, you got it. All right. Thank you, everyone. I first want to thank the Sugarloaf Citizens Association and all members of the public who are here, who have been communicating with us, to our DEP, our Department of Environmental Protection. Thank you. Our goal today was really to bring folks together so that we could review the materials. We could probably spend many days reviewing all these materials, but we wanted to lay the foundation and make sure that all of us on the council had the same information and the opportunity to ask questions and to hear the answer as a full body, given the gravity of this issue, how important it is, how long it has been going on. We, as the district council member, expressed the frustration I think all of us feel about how long this has been going on, and the need to really move us in a direction that we are closing the RRF and taking care of our responsibility on solid waste. I want to reiterate that we will be taking up the solid waste management plan. That February 11th will be a hearing. It will be an afternoon hearing, and that then it will go to the Transportation and Environment Committee for at least one session, but I'll leave that to the chair, and then back to the full council. And so I think we definitely have follow-up from Councilmember Mink's excellent questions. And I'm sure there will be other follow-up in the days to come. But I just want to appreciate everyone who did quickly pull this together over the holidays, lots of conversations happening to make sure that we could get this on the calendar and have this really important conversation. So thank you for all the preparation that went into this, and it will be continued. So thank you very much. Moving on now, the council will now sit as the district council for agenda item number 2. It's an action on corrective map amendment, CMA H-151-12701, Piedmont Road, parcels P541 and parcel P594. I think I have Ms. Nadeau with me. Is there anything you need to update us on? No, you'll get yourself settled.
Good morning, council members. I'm going to, if you don't mind, have planning come up to the table because they have a presentation for this.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, so this is CMA H151. I believe this is this council's first and also my first. We get these very rarely. I think it's the first one in like 10 years. So what a corrective map amendment does is it corrects a mistake that was made in the zoning. So starting with the beginning of the packet, this is a technical error for 12701 Piedmont Road. This is a property in Clarksburg. It's about 4.9 acres and 2 unplatted parcels. If you're trying to figure out where it is in the county, it's the northeast corner of the intersection of Stringtown Road and Piedmont Road. So CMAs require a public hearing. That public hearing was held on January 14th. The attorney for the property owner testified in support of this corrective map amendment. There was testimony from an adjoining neighbor who testified that he was opposed because future development on the property could interrupt the enjoyment of his home and reduce property values, which I will discuss in a moment. So the corrective map amendment, as noted, is a correction of an administrative or technical error that was made at an SMA or DMA, which is a sectional map amendment or a district map amendment. And the planning board is actually the only person who can file an application for a CMA, and they must show that there was an error or an inaccurate depiction of a zoning boundary line on a map that was previously adopted. I do want to flag here that a CMA is not a basis for determining a change in character of the neighborhood or at looking at any pending development. It's just about fixing a prior mistake. So planning staff is going to go through a presentation for you that shows the history of this property, what happened, and why they believe that an error was made. But before that, I do want to address the concerns noted by the adjoining neighbor. He testified in opposition, noting that he had checked the zoning of his property and this property and bought his parcel based on assuming that there would not be a lot of development on this site. Council staff does note first that there is no development application pending for this property. We don't know what the property owner wants to do with it, so that door is not yet open. Further, to council staff's knowledge, and I believe planning staff had confirmed, all the things that happen with development have not been studied yet. So we don't know the water, sewer, the septic, the forest conservation. So if there was a development application, that entire process would have to be gone through and looked at, and there would be further opportunity for all the neighbors to testify and appear at the planning board hearing. Second, oh no, that was it actually. Thank you. So I will move on to the planning staff presentation.
Hi, good morning. For the record, Katie Mencarini with the Up County Division of the Montgomery County Planning Department, presenting CMA H151-12701 Piedmont Road. My colleague here just really covered the process, so I'm going to skim that and I'll talk more about like what the specific case is to make the most of your time. Okay, so accurately stated, the zoning code states that the planning board is the only applicant that can come forward and that the council can choose to approve, deny, or remand back to the planning board. Those are your choices today. So what I hope to go over today is reviewing the technical error, explaining how we came to this conclusion, determining how that error was made, and then a recommendation for the correction. All right, so that brings us here today. We're going to walk through the technical error, and so I want to do is first give you a sense of the area that we're talking about. So the site is outlined in a red dashed line here, and it's located at the northeast corner of Snowden Farm Parkway and Stringtown Road in Clarksburg. The site is accessed from the south on Piedmont Road, from which it's addressed, and it terminates in a cul-de-sac. Now, to the west, we have the developed area of Clarksburg. To the east, we have the Fountain View subdivision. To the north is the rural development pattern that the Agriculture Reserve is known for. And to the south of Snowden Farm Parkway and Piedmont Road are areas already zoned R200. The subject property consists of 4.9 acres and includes 2 existing single-family homes. All right. As early as the 1970s, the property was oddly split zoned. The northern portion of the property was zoned rural density transfer, which was the predecessor to the Agriculture Reserve Zone, and the southern portion was zoned R200. Based on our research, this is clearly a mistake because the split zoning occurs across several record lots and even splits some houses. That's not how we do zoning. Furthermore, it actually kind of looks like it's mimicking, I think, like a stormwater management zone or something. It's actually following another line. I think it was a mistake. So then we get here to 1980s when the county undertook the master plan for Damascus, which covers a very large area. So one of the objectives of that master plan was to reestablish the boundaries for the agriculture reserve. Now on the next few slides, I've modified some versions of the map to highlight where the site is located, but these are pulled from that. Here we have the agriculture and open space map that was included in that plan in the final approved and adopted version. And it's showing working farms in the cross-hatched section and then existing residences in a white background and light dotting. Now this site again is shown in red, and the site was identified as an existing residence. So not the agriculture zone, but an existing residence. Now what we have here on map 101 of the Damascus Master Plan, or am I in the right spot? Sorry. Okay, sorry, this map is showing the proposed expansion of the agricultural reserve area. Now you can see the vertical lines above Stringtown Road are showing the areas already included in the ag reserve. The solid white coloring is showing rural communities, and the thick black solid line is showing the agricultural reserve boundary. I point all this out because on page 82 of the Damascus plan, it says the plan proposes 1,050 acres in and around Damascus to be included in the county's agricultural reserve area. These areas are shown on page 83, shown on this slide. Now you can see here that the boundary is clearly intended to be Stringtown Road, so agriculture above, residences below. Now, well, here, I was getting ahead of myself before. This is page 101 of the Damascus Master Plan, which is showing recommendations for zoning and major roadways. Now, looking at the legend, you can see that the symbology for agriculture reserve and R200 isn't really clear. The two symbols for ag reserve and R200 are subtly different. It looks like R200 and agriculture reserve have a white background with some black dots of some density. The density seems to change, but it's very hard to tell when you look at the bigger map and then zooming in. So this is where we believe the confusion and ultimately the mistake occurred. The site should have some black dots, but it kind of looks all white. And you can tell this is a mistake because the area above Stringtown Road, which is intended to be the ag reserve, also has dots like R200. So dots are where they're not supposed to be. All right, moving along. Now we have the 1985 Arrows Plan, and you can see this discord comes up again. There's so we have one map for land use and one for zoning and highways. These maps should kind of match. And what you see here for the site is we have two different treatments. So on the left, the land use plan, there's no green dots, not even partial dots, no dots at all. Now on the right, there are dots, and then that weird split zoning comes back for some reason. And so we don't quite know exactly how it happened, but it's clearly presenting itself. Another contributor to the mistake we think that came up with this is that it was not our practice at the time when we were doing master plans to provide a list of all the properties that were going to be rezoned with the master plan. We kind of just like relied on the maps. And as you can see, like when you're zooming in really closely, and we have the, the ability with PDFs and stuff to do that. But this is back when we were like hand coloring maps. You know what I mean? So like this was not setting ourselves up for success. We've since corrected those practices. I think that's what I really want to convey is that this is unlikely to happen again. We're very due diligent. I know that you're, Commissioner Fanny Gonzalez, from working with the Planning Commission, we have a very extensive process where we show maps and we list all of the projects and we say, this property is going to stay this zone or this property is going to change. Okay, sorry, belaboring the point, but I want to get through it. Okay, so that brings us back to the subject at hand. Staff has provided evidence that a true mistake was made with the rezoning of the 12701 Piedmont Road in 1982. The site is currently zoned agriculture reserve, which stipulates 1 unit per 25 acres. Now the proposal is to change it back to R200, which is what it was really developed under originally and what it would conform to. The site is 4.9 acres and has 2 single-family homes on the property that predate the zoning change. To be clear, the CMA would only affect this property, and furthermore, there's no development approach with this application. Thank you for stating that as well. I just wanted to reiterate that. This is a correction, not a rezoning. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, the applicant for the CMA is the Planning Board. The Planning Board provided public notice in accordance with Section 59751 on September 27th, and the staff report was posted on Monday, September 30th. There was a public hearing held on October 10th. One person did speak. They actually asked to be included with this. They are in the Fountain View subdivision. We are looking into that, but we have, and I can get into that later if you want, but we decided that this one was a clear mistake, and we wanted to keep this in isolation because that clarity was there. So we're moving forward with what we know we can defend and explain as a mistake. As my colleague mentioned earlier, the council had a public hearing 2 weeks ago on January 14th. You summarized the public testimony perfectly, saying that, the property owner had an attorney, sharing that they are in favor of this. And then we did have one adjacent property owner that said they would prefer that this either be denied or there be a moratorium because they're concerned about the potential for new density on the lot. Okay, and I'm going to conclude here with the Planning Board recommendation. So we determined that a mistake was made, And resolving the mistake would bring this non-conforming property into compliance with the zoning code, and therefore the planning board's recommendation is to approve corrective map amendment H151, changing the site from R200 or AR to R200.
So the staff report contains a resolution. The resolution included in the staff report is for if the council agrees with the planning board that a mistake was made and wants to grant this application. If the council does not agree, then council staff, will need to draft a new resolution. So this will need to be put back on the agenda next week. But that is the resolution that is in the staff report for you. And we're here for any questions.
Council Vice President Giwando.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the explanation, and just wanted to ask just have you walk through a little more about this, because it changed over time, over over many decades, and then even within the correction process, I feel like there were some mistakes in that process. So the current zoning slide, it says AR under Stringtown. Mm-hmm. For those areas, southeast of the property. Okay. How does that work with the theory that Stringtown was the dividing line for the AR area? Explain that to me?
Sure. So, if we're looking here, this is the zone, and what's showing here, just to be clear, is our recommended zoning for the site, but everything else is the current zoning. So as you mentioned, south of Springtown Road and south of the site, we have the R200 zoning. North of Stringtown Road is AR. That makes sense. What we're saying here, and I think this is, I don't want to answer a question that you're not asking, but I think what we're saying here is that this, with the idea that Stringtown Road is the boundary, this would make sense to be R200 as it was before. Perhaps what you're asking is about the development to the east.
Yes.
Is that okay? All right, let me get to that.
Yeah.
So those were also developed clearly under the R200 zone. Those, like the majority of those lots are 20,000 square feet. That is what they're supposed to be in the R200. The problem that we have is that in 1994, the Clarksburg Master Plan relooked at that subdivision and confirmed the AR zone. This site was not included in the 1994 plan. So we can say, okay, we can isolate the mistake to the 1982 Damascus plan. It was never looked at again. Therefore, we can say, okay, this was a mistake that was just sitting there waiting to be corrected. The trickier part, we're not saying that the Fountain View may not be a mistake. It may be. But because when we found that it was relooked at in 10 years later, it's harder for us to make that judgment call right now. And so we would prefer to keep those as two separate items that the planning board may bring to you in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's why the southeast part is still AR. So you're saying you might look at that in the future?
Oh, we're currently looking at it. It'll be a matter of if the planning board agrees that a mistake, then that will come to you. If they determine that a mistake wasn't made, then it won't come to you.
Got it. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Certainly.
Great. Any other comments or anything? Councilmember, oh, no, you're just looking. All right. That, I think we don't have any other questions. So we will take action today on the corrective map amendment and then get the resolution at our next meeting, correct? Or is that what you?
Depends what the vote is. If you all agree, then yes, this resolution will be signed.
Correct. I was anticipating. So Councilmember Friesen moved, Councilmember Sayles second. Not seeing any questions or comments. All those in favor of approving the correct. Oh, it's roll call. All right, roll call.
Councilmember Lutke?
Yes.
Councilmember Lutke votes yes. Councilmember Mink?
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sayles?
Yes.
Councilmember Sayles votes yes. Councilmember Friesen?
Yes.
Councilmember Friesen votes yes. Councilmember Glass?
Yes.
Councilmember Glass votes yes. Councilmember Katz?
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Albornoz?
Yes.
Councilmember Albornoz votes yes. Councilmember Fana Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Fana Gonzalez votes yes. Councilmember Balcom?
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Giwando?
Yes.
Councilmember Giwando votes yes. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes.
Now we'll get the resolution next time. All right. Thank you all. I appreciate you. Sorry you had to wait a little bit. All right. Our last item for this morning is our consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve this consent calendar?
So moved.
Councilmember Lutke moved. Councilmember Friesen seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. All right. The council is in recess until 1:30. Thank you, everyone.